Hey guys, what's up? I'm Kit. This is SchizoKitzo. It's time to get crazy. So I was on Zyprexa from December of 2018 to July of 2021. Yes, that's this month right here. So I'm actually going off of Zyprexa right now, and before I forget what it was like being on it, I figured I might as well do a review video. My Lamictal review video was received pretty well by you guys. I will link it up here in the cards if you haven't seen it. And I figured I'll just do another one. So I'm going to talk about Zyprexa, or Olanzapine as it's also commonly called. And when I first started this medication, it was basically a miracle drug for me. Like, it was my life raft in the middle of the tumultuous ocean that I had found myself in the midst of my worst schizoaffective episode ever. So Zyprexa, or Olanzapine, is what's called a second-generation antipsychotic, or an atypical antipsychotic. That's basically the term given to antipsychotic medications that became approved after 1990. So it was originally patented in 1971 and approved for use in the United States in 1996. It's believed to block serotonin and dopamine receptors, but like a lot of psychiatric drugs, we're still not really sure how it works. So I will not be showing you guys my Zyprexa prescription bottle. It's just a prescription bottle. It's not even that big of a deal anyway. But I didn't black it out, so I don't want you guys seeing all my personal information. So I'm just gonna go ahead and show you my last Zyprexa pill. So this is the pill that I've been taking for almost 3 years. Although actually, come to think of it, I started on a much lower dose. This is a 20 milligram pill. So it's actually the highest dose that's approved for psychiatric use. Yay me, I needed the highest dose. Wow, okay. But I mean, as you can see, it's not a small pill, but it's not a big pill either. It's easy to swallow. It doesn't dissolve. It doesn't dissolve when you take it. So in terms of taking it, I'd say 10 out of 10 taking it. Not that big of a deal at all. So you can easily take other pills with it. But yeah, unlike Lamictal, it doesn't dissolve on contact with water, which is very, very, very nice. So I started taking Zyprexa when I was in the midst of the worst schizoaffective mood episode of my entire life. I was delusional, psychotic, hallucinating. I mean, I was all that. It was not great. And so I started taking Zyprexa along with fluoxetine, or Prozac, which is a really common antidepressant. The two drugs do interact with each other, but they're taken together because the interaction is basically better for the brain. I ended up going off the Prozac because my doctor believed that it kind of sparked a manic episode in me. So we definitely got me off that as soon as possible. But the big point is that Zyprexa it has some mood stabilizing effect to it, which is really, really, really nice. It also works to keep my voices away, which is also very, very nice. I like being alone in my own head, like, for sure. And the best part is that it's also kind of kept my depression away, which is really, really, really nice. So beyond taking the pill, what are the first impressions of Zyprexa for me? So when I first started taking Zyprexa, I mentioned, of course, that I was very, very, very psychotic at the time. But the big thing for me I noticed was that my voices that were like always constantly in my head, they started acting kind of funny. Like, they started, it's almost as if I was on the phone with someone and the phone call started breaking up. So they would kind of like talk in bursts, and then they wouldn't talk at all. And then they come back in broken sentences, and then they leave. And I started getting the sense that I was grasping that for the first time since the 8th grade, I was alone in my own head. And guys, don't ever take for granted being alone in your own head. It's a blessing, like it really is. But it was so weird for me because I was so used to thinking in conversation with the voices in my head. Like, every thought I had, I always had a second, third, fourth, fifth opinion. Like, I had a little peanut gallery. I had friends. I had these beings, whatever you want to call it. But I had these voices that I had relationships with, and it was really weird to kind of like have them leave. And it was hard for me at first. I remember the night before I went on Zyprexa, I basically cried myself to sleep because I thought I was going to lose all my friends. And I did, spoiler alert, I did. But it wasn't as bad as I thought it would be. But that went, I mean, as I went slowly up on Zyprexa, By the time I was on the 20 milligram dose, they were mostly gone. They come back before I started Seroquel, which is the drug I'm currently transitioning towards. The voices would come back maybe once every day or so, sometimes multiple times in a day, but they never would stay longer than 5-10 minutes. But first impressions? Well, Zyprexa, it worked. So I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. So it worked pretty quickly for me, and yeah, save for the fact of losing my friends, that's the only reason I got a 9 out of 10 instead of a 10 out of 10. Now let's move on to side effects. You can never be without them. So drowsiness is one of the biggest complaints of any antipsychotic medication. Within an hour of taking it, I basically cease to function and I have to go to sleep for 10 to 11 hours a night. I'll go to bed around 8 and then I wake up in the morning around 6:30. When I do wake up, I am bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, totally wide awake, not wanting to go back to sleep at all, which is a blessing in some ways, but not so much in the weekends when I really want to sleep in and just enjoy that sweet rollover and go back to sleep feeling. That doesn't happen on Zyprexa for me. But I've heard a lot of people actually have drowsiness during the day when they take antipsychotics. So I didn't actually experience that, and I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, so drowsiness does happen, but only happens at night. So the least favorite side effect that I associate with Zyprexa is something called extrapyramidal side effects. And I think I'll show you. So you have your hand, right? And it's basically like a little mini movement disorder. So my hand would do this. And I don't mean like lithium tremors, which are like this. I mean like shaking back and forth. Like I pipette for a living. I do this test tube to test tube, right? And so when I like started taking Zyprexa and I went to work, it was like shake, 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 shake. But my doctor put me on cogentin or benztropine. That basically negated the extrapyramidal side effects entirely, which was really good, and I was able to do my job, which is good. It also kind of manifested in restless leg syndrome. Like I would get these jerks when I was trying to go to sleep, and it would be really distracting, so I'd have to take cogentin in order to calm down my body so that I can sleep. Other weird things was that when I started taking it, I used to be an avid reader, and I'll be honest with you guys, I read a lot of fan fiction. But more accurately, I used to read a lot of fan fiction. When I started taking Zyprexa and I got up to the full dose, I found it very hard to read more than a few pages or a few screens at a time before I had to take a break. I also used to write a lot of fan fiction. I'm actually published in fanzines, 9 of them to be exact, and I also lost my ability to write anything when I started taking Zyprexa, which the trade-off for stability was what that was for me. And that was one of the reasons I am currently trying to go off of it, is because I want to get that creativity back. I want to get the ability to read back because I'm in a stable point in my life, but more on that later. Now, the reason I'm actually going off Zyprexa entirely is this final side effect, and it's that Zyprexa can actually cause OCD. Yes, obsessive compulsive disorder. This is a drug-induced condition. Now, I've had OCD tendencies my whole life. Like, I always have this intrusive thought that, what if when I leave my apartment, it burns down while I'm not there and all my guinea pigs die and I lose everything I care about? That's been with me for a very long time. But when I started taking Zyprexa, my symptoms got worse. I started having these obsessive thoughts that basically, and I'm not going to go into too much detail about it. I'm not going to talk about OCD on this channel. It's not part of this channel. But for the purposes of this video, just know that over the time when I went up on my dose of Zyprexa, the longer I took it, the more serious the symptoms got. And it actually got to the point where I was crippled, couldn't work. I was living with my dad and I barely could make it through the day. Like, I was crying all the time, I was having panic attacks, it was terrible. My doctor eventually put me on N-acetylcysteine, which is a supplement that you can buy at any Walmart basically, but it's used to treat treatment-resistant OCD, so that actually helped me kind of come back to normal. But when I learned recently, reviewing the literature, that Zyprexa can cause OCD, I went, no, I'm not on this anymore, and that is the main reason I'm going off of it. Also, finally, I do want to make a point that weight gain is a very common side effect of Zyprexa, but I didn't get that, so yay. Finally, side effects, well, with everything, even though it really worked for me, which I do want to take into account, but the OCD and the extrapyramidal side effects and the drowsiness was a blessing, we're not going to count that, but we're going to rate side effects 7 out of 10. So not terrible, but not great either. So it's kind of like, not take it or leave it, but a little bit better than that. Well, what happens when I miss a dose of Zyprexa? Not that I've ever done this on purpose, but it might happen if I'm in between prescriptions or I just forget for some reason, that kind of thing. I noticed that I have a really hard time sleeping. I'm so used to the drowsiness that comes with it to help me sleep that without it, I don't really get to sleep right. And of course my voices tend to come back a little bit more. It's not like an immediate bounce back thing where like suddenly they're constantly there if I miss a day, but they do kind of come back more often. So instead of just having like, you know, one instance over the course of 2 days, it would be like 5 or 6 instances over the course of a few days, but it would still be 5 to 10 minutes each. So missing a dose, I'd say 8 out of 10. So altogether, Zyprexa really worked for me. It kept my voices away. It made my mood stable. It kept away my depression, but it also gave me OCD and movement problems. So overall, I'm gonna give this drug an 8 out of 10. So it's pretty good. If you're about to start it, like, don't think that everything that happened to me is going to happen to you. Your experience is going to be different than mine. If you've been on Zyprexa, feel free to leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear about it because everyone's experience is so different. But other than that, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, and thank you for joining me in making the uncomfortable comfortable. Bye-bye.